This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 155 of the Dressage Radio Show. Hello and welcome to the program. JJ Tate joins me in just a moment to discuss the principles of training for the competition ring versus training to improve on the art of dressage. But first, a segment brought to you from the New England Dressage Association, in which we discuss with Leslie de Grand Maison just some of the things to consider when you're preparing for your first competition. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, you have a very interesting topic for our listeners this week because it is something that everyone has to address. They all have to begin somewhere, don't they?
That's correct, yes. And I'm going to talk about preparing for your first schooling show, or it could be also preparation for your first official show. I have attended the USDFL program and graduated from the program with distinction, and judged many schooling shows in the New England area, mainly in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Vermont, and feel I have a good handle on how people could prepare better or enjoy more their first experiences out in the show ring.
Well, enjoying the process is all important, isn't it? Because we have to remember we do it for fun. And there are some shows, schooling shows and environments where you can go just without any pressure, just to enjoy it and get a feel for what it's all about. That's
correct. I have several students that really don't have a strong desire to compete in the sanctioned shows, but like to have, goals, or would like to go out and just have the experience in a very low-key way of competing and seeing how they would do if a judge scored them on a test. And so oftentimes I recommend to them to go to the ride review ride events or the ride critique ride events where it's fairly casual, and usually you'll go to a farm and they'll have usually an L graduate, sometimes a USCF licensed judge there, and it's usually very friendly, warm environment, and you ride your test in front of the judge and they score you, and then they discuss areas where you can improve and maybe coach you a little bit, and then you ride your test again, and the whole process takes about a half an hour. And so that's a great opportunity for people to go out and get some good education, and they're usually very reasonably priced from a licensed official or an experienced L graduate, and also see how their horse is going to behave and how their nerves are going to behave at such an event.
Yes, I mean, that's all important too, isn't it? Because you never know until you're in that environment just how you're going to react, and that of course will affect your horses too.
That's right. We have I had taken a student to a schooling show once, and she was very shocked that she felt like she was nauseous and might throw up. And it's actually a very normal feeling for anyone going into a competition, but if you've never competed before, never done anything like that before, it can surprise you. Usually what I try to do is prepare folks before they go by, having them ride through the test and explaining a time frame. You want to know how long it takes to get to wherever it is. The nice thing about these events, dressage and these ride critique rides, is that you know exactly what time you're going to ride. So you can plan accordingly as far as giving yourself plenty of time to drive to the location, plenty of time, give yourself at least an hour to park get a little unpacked, get your information from the secretary, and then get your horse unloaded, and then maybe another hour to tack up and get ready to ride. And then from there, you know, it depends on the horse, but oftentimes the first time you go, you don't know what your horse will be like, so you have to allot enough time to warm up before you go in.
Right, and of course it always helps if you can go with a friend too, doesn't it?
Yes, that's very true, Chris. I recommend that people bring at least one person with them the first time they go. Even folks that seem to go out, you know, load their horse and go to the beach or go trail riding or drive to their lessons by themselves. It's a different environment when there's a large group of horses or there's a lot going on. So I always recommend that they bring an extra set of hands to help them. And hopefully they choose somebody that's supportive and a relaxed individual themselves to help keep everybody calm and cool as they prepare for their ride.
And of course there's that all-important part of the experience of remembering the test. And of course at the lower levels you can have somebody call that test, can't you? So that's always, if you're terribly nervous, a good way to, you know, to get to grips with the whole experience.
Yes, and you definitely want to, if you feel like you need help in a reader to read your test for you, you want to make sure that they know what they're doing so that they don't add additional stress by reading too fast or too slow. So that's something that should be practiced ahead of time. And then I usually, you know, what I recommend to students and also what I see is that the folks that really get to the warm-up early enough and walk their horses for a nice period, you know, at least 20 minutes so that the horses can see everything and they can relax and there's no pressure. And then they need to gear their warm-up to the horse that they have that day. So sometimes your horse might be very high and energetic and you may need to work the horse for a longer period of time or in a more relaxed way. You know, some horses you need to break more frequently to relax them, and some horses you need to ride them more forward and energetically to get them to release their energy, but that they get enough time so that they don't feel rushed before they need to go into the arena for either the critique ride or their test. I also recommend that they have the person that's helping them keep track of the schedule so that they know immediately when the test in front of them is done. They want to know when they're on deck so that the horse in front of them, they're ready to go as soon as that horse finishes, and then they take their time going around the arena. You know, they have plenty of time to go around the arena to let the horse get acclimated to the judge's booth and the flowers and the letters and all of that. And then once the judge rings the bell and they come down the center line, just to stay as relaxed and calm as possible, preparing for their movements, but remembering that, you know, mistakes will happen, and that once that is the case, or if that is the case, that then you go on to the next movement, forgetting what happened. That's the wonderful thing about dressage tests, is that if your horse or you have a problem in a movement, that movement is scored, and then as you move on to the next movement, you start fresh. And so it's very possible, and happens quite frequently in schooling shows, where somebody might get a low score because a horse spooks or bucks, and then gets a high score because they've regained their composure and they're able to execute whatever it is in a wonderful manner.
Yeah, absolutely. All important to remember that we do it for fun as well, so you're nice and relaxed at the end of it too, not too stressed by the whole experience.
Right. The idea is to try and enjoy it and to keep your sense of humor. And certainly maybe, and as time goes on, it does definitely get easier. So for the folks that definitely would like to compete and continue to progress up the competition ladder, the more they go to these types of events, the better and easier they'll get at handling all the different situations that might come up. Certainly just keeping, you know, in your mind's eye as you're coming down the center line and riding the movements, that little voice in your head that keeps everything the same as if you were training, so that you don't add any additional pressure or stress to yourself or the horse.
Good advice. Well done. Well, thank you very much, Leslie. I appreciate this. I'm sure our listeners will find it helpful because so many of them are at that end of their process of getting into the sport. So I appreciate your contribution. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. It was wonderful to speak with you, Chris.
Well, JJ Tate joins me now from up in Maryland, where summer base. You fled the steamy climate of Wellington for the summer season, have you, JJ?
That's right, Chris. We definitely got out in time, before it gets a little too hot. But unfortunately, it gets just as hot and humid in Maryland as well. But for right now, we've got some really great spring weather, and the horses are really enjoying being out in their bigger paddocks and having real grass under their feet and being able to tear it up a little bit more. So it's been fun. Florida is an amazing time and wonderful for the training and to advance the horses and compete, but it's not the best place, to let the horses be horses. The properties are really small and the turnouts are tiny, and we just, it just feels great to go for a nice long canter out on the grass. So we're all happy to be home.
Yeah, well, the last time we spoke, of course, and you were on the show, I visited you at your training base down in Florida, which is lovely in itself, as you say, but it is Wellington, and there's nothing like letting horses be horses and running about in a larger space for a while, is there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and even in our training program in Florida, on Fridays we try and keep it, as best we can to hack days, where we just take the horses out for a nice. We're really lucky where we are in Florida that there's a bunch of just gravel roads, and they get to look at something different than just the dressage arena. But that it can get a little exciting with the landscapers and the polo horses and mailboxes and all kinds of things. But it's great exposure for them in that way. But they never really get to. I think they all just need a nice long canter in the high grass. They just love it. All the horses are just so happy to have a little more free and open space. And Florida is terrific. And we have a nice facility with good turnout too, but it's just nice to have a little more wide open spaces.
Absolutely. Well, before we move on to our topic this week, JJ, tell us how things wrapped up in terms of your performances and what you were planning in Wellington this season, because of course you had the fabulous new facility at the Global Dressage Festival to take advantage of too.
Yes, we are so excited. When my sponsor Elizabeth Glarisco-Wolf first bought the property, it was sort of just a couple of years ago. It was sort of like this little, great little dressage little island amongst all these polo grounds. And we were like, okay, this is really great. We love the place, but all of a sudden the new facility ended up seriously 5 minutes from our place. So we couldn't be more thrilled that it's right there. And I don't know what possessed me to think that this was going to be a good idea, but right before we left, right before we moved, 15 horses north, locked down 2 homes and, moved barns, with the 6 people and 15 horses. I thought it would be a great idea to show right before we were going to leave. So, but it worked out really great. My junior rider, Caroline Adams, did super. She's now in the top 12 in the country for Gladstone in the juniors. And then I got to show Elizabeth's horse, Fabergé, in another developing horse class, and he got a 72. He was awesome. So he's qualified now for the national championships in Chicago. And I got a brand new horse. We had a deal going with one of my longest clients, Debbie Dalsig, from Canada, from Thunder Bay. We found a horse. Actually, Caroline Rossman had the horse, and she had got a hold of me, and she's like, "You've got to see this horse. You've got to come try her." And we went, and we just loved her. And so her name is Damiana, and she's 4. So we got a brand new face on the team as well. So we're really excited. We came north with a lot of new and exciting things, and I have one of my first Spanish stallions in training who I love. So that's been kind of a new fun adventure as well. So yeah, we're doing great. We're just really excited to be home, and great group of horses. So it's fun to see my local clients up here as well, and get to see my husband.
That's a plus too, exactly, because you had to be separated for the longest time, didn't you? Since you were married.
Exactly. Yeah, we keep laughing because we're like, it's kind of like I know we're going to be newlyweds for like a year or whatever it lasts, but we're kind of funny because we got married in December, and then I was in Florida and he was up north at Scott Hassler's place. So we're like, it's a whole new experience again.
Yes, well, it'll keep the relationship fresh for eternally, I would think, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's a long-distance marriage. I've heard they work. I heard they work better that way. I don't know.
So I hear, yes. So tell us what the plans are then for this year, JJ. With, you said 15 horses that you have up there?
Yeah, I think somewhere between 50 and 20. We sort of, I have a great group of working students that are a bunch of young riders, so that's really fun. So hopefully we'll have a nice group. Hopefully, we've got a couple of girls that are close into the top 12. So we had a real, it's not a terrible tragedy, but nobody died or anything. So it's all in relativity, but. Katie Foster, my young rider who's been riding me since she's been like 12, she has the most wonderful young rider horse in Sacramento. And on his way home from Florida on the transport, he went into some colic and she lives in northern Wisconsin, and he had to be dropped off in southern Illinois at the university. And we waited, and hopefully he was going to go through it and come through it. But he ended up needing surgery. So it's one of our first colic surgeries in a long time on Team Tate. So it was really scary, and I'm heartbroken for Katie and her dreams this year, as it's her last year of young riders, and I think she's ranked number 2 in the country at the moment. So as always, the horses, it's a experience of reality checks and humbling experiences and heartache and disappointment, but we're just so happy that George is healthy. He's doing well. He came through surgery amazing. He's at home doing great. So knock on wood that there's no more bumps in that road, but so that was that. But hopefully we should have a good group of some other young riders going to Gladstone, and I've got a great group of young horses that I'm going to do. I've got one in the 4-year-olds and one in the 5-year-olds, and then Fabergé in the developing horse. So yeah, it's exciting.
When do you kick off the season up there then, JJ? Where are we now? And then coming into the second week in May. Do you kick off fairly soon after you get back from Florida?
We sort of have a little downtime. I've already taught a couple clinics because, no rest for the wicked. I just gotta hit the ground running. But as far as shows, we kind of let the horses have a little downtime when, we still ride them, but we just, I like to get the horses out and just, again, just let them sort of stretch their legs out and just kind of come down from a long, hard season and a big trip. So we are not going to actually start showing until the end of May. The CDI over in Allentown in New Jersey is going to be our first show up north. So we're looking forward to that, and it's going to be, some new experiences for some of the horses, and that'll be fun. But yeah, it's Florida is amazing because you can just go to a horse show, during the week, and you can go to a horse show on the weekend, and then you can show in CDI 3 times a month. It's just incredible the amount of shows. So I like to just kind of, I don't think it's healthy to have a continual 12-month show season for the horses. I just think that they don't need that. It's not healthy mentally or physically to just be pushing all the time for that. So I definitely like to come up north and let the horses just take a big exhale and, just get in touch with themselves again and, increase a little more fun in the work and let them have a little mental break as well.
Yes. Well, that segues very nicely into our topic this week, JJ, and that is about the intensity of competition and the training for competition as opposed to training to become better in the classical style of dressage and reinforcing the basics and that sort of thing, as opposed to riding for the judges. Because it, as you say, when you're down in Florida, not everyone. We should, also point out that not everyone gets to Florida. You're very fortunate if you do and get exposed to that level of competition and the availability of shows. But a lot of people around the world listening to this will say, "Well, I'm just an amateur, and I can only compete during the season wherever you are in the world." But there is still, isn't there, a culture today, I think, has developed where it's become competitive in some countries more than others to be competing for the judges, for riding for the judges, and perhaps not staying as closely in touch with those basics of classical training as we could do.
Yeah, yes, I definitely agree. I mean, I think there's for sure in America, I'm not sure about Europe and everywhere, but, there's definitely a faster, there's a faster, more, better, there's constantly like this rat race to like have more, do more, get more, it's just always this like pressure. And, riding, especially dressage, but horses in general, they just bring you a little bit back to, taking a little more time and being a little more slow maybe and a little bit more, have a little more substance. I do, in some ways, I used to love, especially when I was in Europe, we took the winter time to absolutely just train the horses. Like, we didn't do any indoor shows. We just trained. And that's the moment when you ride without stirrups. And that's the moment that you teach the horse the flying change. Like, you've got this safe zone of 5 months to just get through to the next level. And I feel, nowadays it's so easy to get so overexposed to horse shows that I really actually kind of prefer to pick a time of the year. And for me, it's sort of because of Florida, it has to be a little bit in the midsummer, that the horses just get a little downtime. You let their bodies, repair, from the stress. And I just think in general, you can never forget the real true horsemanship aspect of riding, where riding around in circles and constantly being in the arena, I just don't think it's good for anybody. And I think for me personally, I love to compete. I definitely feel like I have found a balance between staying classical and committed to the classical culture, as well as being successful in the arena. Now, I haven't ridden on the team yet, but that's a goal at some point. But, I do think for me, what I love about competing, of course, it's always fun to win, and that's great. But it's the personal challenge of how well am I riding, and can I get that horse to do exactly what I want, exactly how I want it, exactly where I need to do it for the test. And I feel like it's such a terrific learning experience for myself when I go take a horse to a horse show, and you just become closer to that horse. You just start to know them a little bit better. You know how they think. You know how they're going to react. You build trust. And even if it's, sometimes I come home learning way more. Most times I learn way more by the shows that don't go very well. That it's like, wow, I have to really make sure that that's more honest in my daily work. Or, I got to really make sure that's my homework, that the horse really, needs to work on that bending. And when the horse is nervous at the horse show and the energy is up, that movement right there is not reliable enough. And so for me, I love to compete for that information, because you really can't recreate the pressure that you're going to have at the horse show. I talk a lot with my sports psychologist, Dr. Jenny Souther, and, we talk about that also for ourselves as riders. Like, there's really no moment that you can really, truly have the exact same amount of nerve at home that you do when you're competing. So I do like to compete. I find it, it helps me stay really sharp in my riding, where it's like, I got to make sure that I can, really make this happen at the moment that I need it to happen. And so it really creates a non-lazy way of riding for myself, where it's like, no, I got to make sure that if a judge were to walk in right now, they would give my position an 8, or they would give is my horse walking across the diagonal on a long rein for a 9. I kind of sometimes like to amp that feeling up to say, what would a judge give this right now? And for me, that helps make my riding sharp. But I do feel that there's, and by training riding, I don't mean like you fluff around and you never, make the horse do anything he doesn't want to do and it's too softy soft. Like real riding is about conviction and structure and accountability on everyone's part, rider as well as horse. And so I do feel sometimes in the competition that riders can go too quick, to make it happen with a little shortcut, like a little pull on the rein there or a little kick, to make that happen, when really it's like, oh, you need to really have the thoroughness and the substance of correct training to really bring success to the arena.
Do you think that from your experience, JJ, there's a distinction between the professionals and the amateurs here in their motivation and expectation and their goals? Are amateurs maybe more competition-driven to measure the success of their training rather than professionals would be more focused maybe on the correctness of training? And is it about time that they have to put into the sport?
Yeah, Chris, I think that's a great point. I definitely think there's, in this, for sure in this country, without having a national standard of training, really with an academy or like, oh, I'm a level 3 now, I think, there is pressure for amateurs because they want to somehow document or judge, like, where am I, and I'm sure there's spouses that are like, hey, like, what are we putting all our money into this for? Like, hey, I know some of my students get pressure. Oh, I didn't have a great ride at the horse show, and now, oh God, I got to go home and face my husband who's going to be like, you're depressed and upset about this horse show. Like, why are you doing this? And it's like, oh boy, that's not a good conversation.
Right.
But I definitely feel that, it is a way to gauge how you're doing for sure. But I really, want to be careful. And I tell my students this all the time. You've got to trust your system and you've got to trust your trainer. And, the trainers have to be held accountable to, of course, teach the correct way of riding. But it's also, I think a big mistake when, you're like, oh, who am I showing in front of this weekend? Oh, it's so-and-so. Oh, she really likes to pull, really high, and the nose out. And she never, she's really going to mark me down if I put the horse, not with the nose out, and then, well, maybe for that horse, that's not the best way to make sure that he's super through over the back and connected to the bridle. Or a lot of times, like, oh, this judge likes him to go really forward. And it's like, yeah, then maybe you throw the horse off balance. So I really shy away from having my riders sort of put the judge's perspective in there. I definitely watch the test with my students on a video, and we go over the test sheets, and we know, hey, I know the judge only gave that a 6, but for us, where that's a huge improvement, because that used to be a big explosion, or, he used to really, kick at my leg at that moment or something. So that for us was a success, even though to the judge was like, oh, that's not great, that's a 6, So they have to really know in their own selves what's positive, what's improved, and to really ride for their horse, like to always know, it could be Santa Claus sitting in that judge's booth, you know what I mean? But they need to ride for their horse and for their own personal goals for that test. And I really try and keep my students keeping it all in perspective and not just changing with the wind of like, oh, so-and-so is going to be sitting at C, I better like really go forward. And it's like, oh, now the horse doesn't know what's happening, because now this is completely different from how we've been working, or how the horse needs to find his own rhythm, maybe a little bit with less tempo, So I really try and help my riders just stay focused on what their personal goals are for that test or that show.
Yes, to stay within their own barometer and not to be riding for the judges, as you say, which change every show, and
exactly.
And different tastes, different requirements, and you could be fluctuating your training all over the place just to ride for the
if you were to follow that.
Yes,
exactly. If you're like, I got to read I got to, and there's judges that I love, and I will really, maybe even talk to them after the show is over about like, oh, did you see that? What did you think about that? What do you think about this horse? Or whatever. But absolutely, like you would just be completely lost if every time you got comments on the test, and that's one moment of time. And yes, it's great feedback, but again, like maybe that horse was really great for him. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I've certainly had every kind of disaster happen in the arena that you can imagine. Like I've even been bucked off on the show ring, and it's like, so the next test on that particular horse, it was like, we finished, and I'm on, and we stayed in the arena like it's a big success. Like, oh, it's not a great score, and oh, yes, I maybe rode him a little slower than I should have, but I got dumped in the last test, so I don't, I just need to go through this right now. I mean, that's an extreme example of it, but you've got to really stay true to what what you're working on personally, where your horse is at, and to always just be true, to him for sure.
True to him and true to yourself, as you say, come away from that show, not necessarily gauging that performance on the color of the ribbon or not, but what you're taking away within your own training system. And if you're an amateur, I think it's important, particularly important, to listen to your trainer, for your trainer to say, well, I know the judges said this, but in terms of this horse's overall performance, what we've done in the last 3, 6, 12 months, whatever, this is progress. This was progress in the trot work or the canter work or the walk. Any one detail, and that's what you have to build on, and staying true to those classical principles.
Yes, absolutely. And it can be difficult. I mean, for me personally, showing young horses, young horses are like growing, and then maybe if they're even not physically growing, they're growing in the training, so, and sometimes with my amateurs, like they're so like ready, I really want to go show. And I do encourage that. I feel it's a great experience, and you learn a lot about yourself as a person, as a rider, as a trainer, because if you're on that horse, you are the trainer at that moment, So I do feel like it's a great learning experience, but, so often it can, if you get too eager to go show, the horse may be sort of in a dip, in his training, and it may not be the right time, to really, go get it, But in another way, I for sure don't wait till it's perfect, because you know what? Perfect is, we seek perfection. It never happens, and everything is just right. That's also something that you got to be in a good enough place and comfortable with everything in the test. 100% be schooling a level above, so that your horse and you are both comfortable with everything that you're able to do in the test, and that he's strong enough to be schooling, the level above, so that nothing in the test is sort of over anyone's head, that because you are going to get nervous, the horse is going to be excited, certain things, come up. So it's good to be also really, really comfortable with the movements as well.
Absolutely. And to that segment that we ran earlier in the show, JJ, about preparation for your first show, it isn't so much about how competition ready you are, but how training ready you are.
Yes, I tell my students all the time, I say, we've got to make sure that every stone has been unturned. We know that the horse is 100% through, really obedient to our aids, and really the training has been really thorough and really full of substance, so that when we take the horse off the property, you're going to lose 30% of what you have at home in your home arena on a normal day. you go to the horse show and you take off the trailer a fire-breathing dragon. And you're like, oh, my God, who are you? Like, this is not the horse I just rode Wednesday night, after work. I don't even know you right now. Who are you? And they passage around, snoring, and you're like, oh, my Lord, what's going to happen? That the energy is up at a horse show, So those things have to be so taken care of at home that you can put the horse in a situation where you're going to be a little nervous and a little insecure, and the energy is going to be up, and you'll still be able to get those things in the test, or you'll still be able to ask the same questions of the horse that you do at home. And a lot of times my students will be like, he's so perfect at home, and then I took him to the horse show, and he was a lunatic, and he was like wild, and I'm like, well, that just tells you that there's something that is happening at home that you need to really look into and self-discover where that tiny little miscommunication or that tiny little hole, rears its ugly head at the horse show. That same concept is happening at home, but so often we don't notice it because we're just at home and the horse is comfortable, and, it's not going to come up till the energy is really high. And so I really like to help my riders find those things. And sometimes you find that anyway. You go to the first horse show of the season and you're like, whoa, okay, he's still not enough in front of my leg or something. So I got to go home and I got to really pay attention that I take care of that at home, that the horse is without a doubt answering that particular question in a great way, because I know when I go off property or I go to the horse show, that's gonna show up, So those are important things to take care of as well.
And in terms of preparation, of course, when you get to a show environment, or at least off the property, that is an opportunity for you to go as many times as you can with a young horse, with a new horse, and make sure that you've got him in the right mindset before training begins and before you get to a competition, and then everything can be unpacked not in the way you were expecting. So there's lots of opportunities there to prepare for the competition by just taking him out, putting him on the trailer, taking him to a new whatever, I think that should be encouraged, and I think the other
a lot more than it is.
Yes,
I agree 100%, 150%. I mean, I don't think people. I mean, I've got a lot of clients now that trailer in for lessons, which I think is great. But, even for me, like, I'm going to trailer over to Scott's next door and be like, hey, can I just, ride this horse over on this property? Because I got a horse show coming up, and the horse is new to me. And I do think that there is also something very, very deeply rooted in the horse as a species of, herd, just the whole concept of being part of a herd. And I think going in a trailer, either by themselves or something, I think that's a really high level of anxiety that's so deeply entrenched in their DNA that they can't help themselves sometimes. And I do think the relationship significantly grows when you take the horse off property and then you come back to the home group. And you go off property and then you come back to the home group. I think that the horse just becomes more and more comfortable with it when they know, okay, this is not my new home. They don't know it's a horse show. They just got on the trailer because they listen to you. They got on the trailer, and then they're at this new place, and they don't know, is this my new forever home, or do we live here in this tent stall, or I can't see anything out. I'm kind of nervous, But I think every time the horse goes away and comes home with you, and not only do they connect better with you as their person and as part of their herd, and they get really relaxed from that, I do think it's important for them to know, yeah, hey, we get on the trailer, we go ride, maybe we stay a couple days, then we come home. And then we're all together in our little group again. I think that's, I swear to God, my horses that go to Florida, and we trailer them all in one big semi, or two semis, but they know everyone on the trailer is part of their group, and then I'm the crazy mad woman, and I have to drive my small trailer with all the equipment behind the semi, because I'm crazy, so that I'm there at every, water stop, and that they see me, and they're like, oh, okay, we're all here. All my people are here, and all my horse friends are here, and they get off the trailer way more mature, from that trip, because they're like, I did that, but I had my friends and I had my people, and you can see them sort of grow up from that. So I do think we have to keep that in mind for the horse, and I cannot encourage enough to go put your horse on the trailer, go, even if it's 5 minutes down the street. It's an experience, and that creates trust, that the horse trusts you, and you learn things without having to be at the horse show, which is also good. You learn things that, okay, I'm going to do this 2 weeks before my first horse show, and I got 2 weeks now to sort of sort that out, before the real show. I just can't encourage that enough. I love that.
Yes, absolutely. Very reassuring for them. And the other thing I think we must never lose sight of, why we all do this, we do it for fun. And if you get so stressed with that horse, wherever you're going, whether you're going training, whether you're going to a different training establishment, a new horse, a different horse, riding with other people that maybe you're not used to, and you feel self-conscious about riding in public. And there are so many components to this, aren't there? But I think at the end of the day, if you've got a spouse at home waiting for you, you need to remind them that you're doing this for fun, and you may not always bring home a ribbon, but you will have satisfied yourself in that journey with the training as that being as good as it can be, and just consolidating every time.
Absolutely.
Why do we do it if we don't do it for fun?
I say that all the time. I agree. At the end of the day, if it's not any fun, and I always say also, like, one of my main sayings that I always have in my head for even just teaching clinics and riding all day long, and it's like, I think you always have to keep in mind that you love horses, and like that's why we want to do this.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, fundamentally, I love horses. I want to help educate their riders so that they're ridden more peacefully and better. And I love horses, and I love the challenge of being able to, really have that harmonious moment, that the clouds part and the sunbeam comes down, and like all the world makes sense for a moment, and then you're left, looking for that moment again, constantly. And I do think, if you struggle with, riding with fear of riding in front of people, or the anxiety of taking the horse off property, like those are things to just slowly take a small bite, of it one at a time. Okay, I'm going to go ride. I'm going to invite my husband out and, some friends. I'm going to ride in front of them. Do that. That's part of my anxiety of the horse show, is that. And then I'm afraid, a little bit nervous about going off property with the horse. I want to practice that piece of it, And then, I'm going to ride in the ring. The warm-up ring is where most things are won and lost because if you're not used to riding with other people, the warm-up ring is like, holy crap, it's like overwhelming. There's horses going everywhere and you can't steer them. The more you try and stay out of people's way, the more you're in their way, and it's just like halting, and you just can't find your rhythm and your harmony because you're just interrupted every second. And then, the car is driving, and then the baby carriage, and then you're like, then you're completely not focused at all. And, that's ride with lots of people, just go to another barn during the busy time. Like, go and just sort yourself out and learn to look up and learn to steer. And, those are all small things that when you lump them all together at the horse show, that might be, more of the problem than the actual getting down the center line to do the test. That's hard enough to do. Just step by step, start to expose yourself to those things that will cause the anxiety, and bite one off a small piece at a time, and then before you know it, you won't have any anxiety about riding in a group or, taking your horse off property, because experience develops relaxation. The more times you've been there, done that, I survived that was no problem. Ooh, that made me nervous, but I made it through. Half of the reason why I'm comfortable in the show ring is because there's been a lot of not great things that have happened in there, and you just kind of get over it, Mm-hmm. But for a long time, you just want to ride it perfect, and then, what's the worst case scenario? Well, the worst case scenario is I forget my test or whatever. Or the worst case scenario is we don't get the lead change right there. You know what? And the sun still comes up the next day if it doesn't happen. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's also great to just sort of take the pressure off yourself and, you know, take it with a grain of salt. It's 5 minutes of your life. Do as much as you can to prepare for the moment mentally, physically, with the, you know, and then, you know, go for it.
Absolutely. Wonderful advice. Well, JJ, I think we've helped a lot of people. Well, I hope we've helped a lot of people review their beginning of the season, you know, and how they approach it, both mentally, you know, psychologically and emotionally too. So I want to thank you very much for that. And I'm not going to let you go without a big congratulations on your jockey, Alison Springer and Arthur at the Rolex Kentucky 3-day event.
Oh, my God. Oh, we just were at a party celebrating the other night down in Middleburg, and it was just so wonderful. Oh, and it's just, we just couldn't be happier. And, you know, she's been just so close and yet so far, so many times. And both of them, both Allison and Arthur, are just world class, both of them. So talented, you know, just wonderful, wonderful athletes. And I just was so excited that she had done so well. And then, you know, it's just been a heartbreak. You know, last year we were crying because third fence from home on the cross country, she took a tumble, and, you know, it just kept eluding them over and over again, so close, and then slipped the grips. So we're just so thrilled that they finally just had a wonderful result that they both deserve so much. So we just couldn't be happier.
They certainly did. And for those of you who missed that and don't follow the sport of eventing, JJ is, in fact, Alison Springer's dressage trainer. And Alison was second at the Rolex Kentucky 3-day event. She became the U.S. Equestrian Federation's national 4-star champion and winning a year and a half's lease on a nice Range Rover, as well as all the other spoils as well. And Alison is my guest on the Eventing Radio show this week, so you can hear her account of her preparation and success this year. And JJ, she credited you too. So perfect week. We've got you on one show and Alison on the other. How's that?
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. We couldn't be happier. It's great, you know, when all the hard work and the dreams come true and hard work pays off, and it's great.
It certainly is. Well, we'll be following them with interest, of course, as this season unfolds, getting ready for the final selection for the Olympic Games. So good luck to them, and also the dressage team. They'll be, all the hopefuls will be heading to Gladstone, and you'll be there with young riders. Did you say, JJ?
Yep. We hopefully we're still getting qualified, but right now we've got a few, one junior and a couple young riders. So hopefully. We'll be seeing you there.
Wonderful. All right, JJ. Well, great to catch up with you. I hope you enjoy the sort of transition into cooler climes before the heat and humidity of the summer set in.
Yeah.
Do you get a bit of a break at all? Will you have a vacation? Do you know what that means? I mean, honeymoon was one thing. Did you ever get your honeymoon, by the way?
No.
You didn't?
No. We did spend a few days with our families because we had a little bit of a destination wedding. It was still drivable distance. Like, that was part of the prerequisite, that it needed to be drivable distance from the barn. So it was like 2 hours from my Wellington barn down in the Keys, maybe 3 hours. But so we spent a couple days with our family there because Richard's obviously from Sweden. So his family flew over, and my family is all in Wisconsin, so everyone flew down. And so I got to spend a couple days, but I was not in the barn. But we do have a trip planned to Sweden this summer for maybe, I think, 6 days or so to celebrate with his extended family that wasn't able to come over to the wedding ceremony. We're going to have a little party in Sweden, so that will be exciting.
Very nice, something to look forward to. Well, JJ, thanks so much for joining me this week. Always great to catch up with you, and for your very helpful advice. And we'll see you again back on the show here in a few weeks, I hope.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Chris. I always enjoy it.
And finally, some news from the New England Dressage Association. Their annual spring show in Marshfield, Massachusetts will be taking place this weekend, May the 12th through 13th, with a record number of entries being showcased throughout the weekend. Spectators will have a lot to look forward to, as for the first time ever, Nida will be playing host to a musical freestyle quadrille on the Saturday night of the show. There will also be a number of other freestyles at all levels throughout the weekend. To add to the excitement, there will be a whole host of riders trying to get their scores to qualify for the North American Junior and Young Rider Championships. In addition, juniors trying for the pony team, riders going for the Brentina Cup, and activity in the other national qualifying tests will be taking place. Competitors should be on the lookout for amazing prizes donated by EQ Bling, Horse Hugger, and Back on Track. Also, Draper Therapies will be handing out their Best Foot Forward Awards for riders with a positive attitude. For more information on the show and other upcoming events, please visit neda.org. That's NEDA.org. And that's our show for this week. I want to thank my friend JJ Tate for joining us again here to give you some, I hope, valuable advice. And also to the New England Dressage Association for sponsoring their segment. All of our show notes and links can be found at dressageradio.com. And of course, if you have any comments, questions, and suggestions, then you can leave them on our Facebook fan page, or you can reach me here at chris@horseradionetwork.com. I will be back at the same time, same place next week, so until then, thank you all for listening.